Hey guys, today I am really excited to be sharing with you Charlotte Tilbury's latest instant look in a palette. These are her face palettes that have eyeshadows and cheek products in there, and this is the 5th edition of this instant look in a palette that she's done for her line. So we'll be doing some swatches, I'll be doing a demo, we'll be doing some comparisons to the other instant look in a palettes. But before we dive into the video, I just want to mention that Beautylish sent this palette over to me. So thank you so much to Beautylish for sending over this beautiful palette. So let's go ahead and get into the particulars of this palette. It is $75 and it is the exact same size and layout as her older instant look in a palettes. So this is this year's, and she's changed up the design of the lid. All the other ones have been plain in her regular kind of oxblood deep maroon color, but for this year she's added this like starburst and holiday theme, and it's really beautiful. So this year's version is called the Gorgeous Glowing Beauty, and it has 7 products on the inside. We have 3 eyeshadows at the top, we have a bronzer, 2 blushes, and a highlighter. Here's some swatches of all of the products, and I basically just go in order as to how they're laid out here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So from left to right, you'll have the 3 shadows, and then we have the bronzer, the 2 cheek products, and then the highlight. All of the products in here are like a pressed powder. There's no like baked gelée situation going on in here. So the eye products here and then these 2 cheek products, those are each 2 grams. And then these 2, the bronzer and the highlight, those are each, let me see, 6 grams. This was made in Italy, and there is a 30-month shelf life once the product has been opened. So I just used this product today to do this demo for you, and I have to say, I think this one is my favorite palette so far. My previous favorite was the Beauty Glow, is that what it's called? Yes, this one. And this was number 4. And I love this cheek product in here. This is probably the one pan in here that I like the most out of everything, including this year's palette. But in terms of everything else, I thought the eyeshadows, especially this color, didn't perform that well. And I just didn't really like the color stories of the other ones that much. And I always seem to have issues with the eyeshadows. Like the dark ones just never seemed pigmented enough, or they seemed a little bit patchy. They just never really performed the way I'm used to Charlotte Tilbury eyeshadows performing. However, in this year's palette, all of the powders perform really beautifully. I use this one as eyeliner, and I thought, there's a chance that this one is going to act the way the other ones did in the other palettes and not really be enough as liner, but it was so pigmented and soft, and I could like blend it really easily and work it into my lash line very easily, and I was very impressed actually with the pigmentation of this shadow. These 2 I have all over my lid. Really beautiful, blended seamlessly. I did have to use a natural hair brush with this, so I started off with, and you'll see this in my demo, but I started off with the Charlotte Tilbury eye blender brush, and her brushes are synthetic hairs, and I went into this shade, and I just wasn't getting the payoff that I wanted. And I thought, you know what, I bet it's the brush, it's not this shade. And I went in with the Sonia G Worker 1 brush, which is dyed goat hair, and these shadows went on beautifully. You can see how beautifully shimmery that one shade is, and I just wasn't getting that with a synthetic brush. So just something to note, if maybe you feel like you're not getting, you know, the impact that you want, maybe play around with different brushes that you may have, or maybe try your fingers. Fingers, especially with shimmery colors, I feel like are always a good option if you don't feel like you're getting the payoff that you want with the brush that you have. So anyway, I just wanted to mention that. The other thing I wanted to mention was, you know, I feel like the cheek products, beautiful. They're very, you know, Charlotte Tilbury. They're on the softer side. They do a really nice kind of like natural flush. This highlight is gorgeous. If you like the highlight that's in her Film Star Bronze and Glow, you're going to like this highlight because it has that really kind of like beaming highlight look to it, but it's not overwhelming. I don't know how she does it. Like she's able to create like a spotlight highlight, like a really bright highlight, but it doesn't look crazy. You know, it doesn't look like that's all you see on someone's face. And then later on in my comparison swatches, I will be swatching this next to the Film Star Bronze and Glow just so you can see. And then I just want to say that the bronzer in here is probably the warmest bronzer I think I've ever experienced from Charlotte Tilbury. All of her bronzers in all of these other palettes and the Sculpt powder and her Film Star Bronze and Glow, they're all very, very neutral. I feel like they can work really well as a contour. They can work really well as a bronzer. This one is very warm in comparison. You can probably see that in the pan. It has like a little bit of like an orangey tinge to it. I have it pretty much all over my face. I think it's a beautiful, beautiful bronzer. I don't mind bronzers that are a little bit warm. I think they just, you know, warm up the face and they look very, very natural. And I think this one does a really good job. I also want to mention that it's not completely matte. There is a little bit of like a satin sheen to it. And then just a quick note about these eyeshadows. So these two are shimmers. This one is a matte. That is definitely a matte. It's like a flat matte. These two shades are fairly neutral. This one has a really strong red undertone, and I like it. I think it's a very pretty, it makes for a very pretty kind of rich chocolate brown. I used it as liner, and you can actually see right here like how red it is, and that may not be that appealing for a lot of people. You know, a lot of people don't like red as a liner. They think it kind of makes them look sick, which is completely understandable. I don't really mind so long as it's, you know, kind of deep. It's not like a bright red. It's kind of like a deep red. So that's what you see there, and that is the tone of this shade. But I really love this. I really love this eye color story. And again, it's different from what she has done in her other palettes where, you know, she's done something similar where there's like, you know, a light shade, a medium shade, and then a darker kind of smoky shade. But they've all been brown. I think in one of them it's a black, but this red tone I think is different for these instant look into palettes. All right, so let's go ahead and get into the demo. So I'm going to start by bronzing my face. I'm going to go into the bronzer over here, and I've got my Sonia G Sculpt 1 brush, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit, and I'm going to start under my cheekbones here and just around the perimeter of my forehead, and blend that all in. This bronzer has a little bit of a warmer tinge that I'm used to from Charlotte Tilbury. Her bronzers, her contour powders, they really have a very nice neutral tone to them. Sometimes they lean a little bit warm, but this one is probably the warmest one I've come across. Next, I'm going to use my Sonia G Cheek Pro brush. I'm going to go into the Swish color here, and I'm just going to brush this across my cheekbone. And now I'm going to go into the Pop color and focus that right on the apples of my cheeks. Brush a little bit across my nose. Really beautiful natural flush there. Let's go ahead and apply the highlight, the number 7 shade, and I am going to use Sonia G Sculpt 2 brush. Gorgeous. This does actually remind me of the Film Star Bronze and Glow highlighter. It has the same kind of sheen. The color is a little bit different, but I feel like I'm getting the same effect from it. I could sit here all day looking at this glow from the highlighter, which is really good. All right, so that's it for the cheek products. I'm going to move into the eyes up here, and these colors look really, really beautiful. I am going to start with, the Brighten, and I actually have a Charlotte Tilbury blending brush. I don't use this often, it's synthetic haired, but I do want to try and see how it works with her shadows. And I'm going to put this on the inner portion of the lid. I don't think I'm getting the impact that this shadow can give me, so I'm going to use a different brush. I'm going to use my Sonia G Worker 1 brush. I'm going to go back into that number 1 shade and apply it to my lid. There we go. Now we have some nice shimmer there. Beautiful. Wow, that's pretty. It's a really pretty shimmer shade. Okay, next I'm going to go into the enhanced shade. I'm just going to use the same Worker 1 brush, and I'm going to focus this on the outer corner and blend it over that number 1 frosty shade. I think for just a really pretty daytime look, I think using 1 and 2 I think that's fine. I don't think you need to, you know, go in with the third shade, or you can use 1 and 3, but I don't think you need more than 2 colors. I think you can do this simple kind of 2-color look and do just a really great kind of like daytime look or evening, you know, depending on your style or whatever. I personally would probably stop right here, but I'm going to go ahead and use this smoke shade, and I'm going to use a pencil brush or smudger brush and just apply it to my lash line and just kind of smoke out my eye a little bit. Probably something I wouldn't do all the time. So I've got my Sonia G Smudger 1 brush, and I'm going to go into this number 3 shade and just apply this to my lash line and really work it into the base of my lashes. So that is all of the products in this palette. I'm gonna go ahead and finish up my makeup look, and I will be right back. All right, here is my finished look. I'll have the details of everything that's on my face down below in the description box, but let's go ahead and do some comparison swatches between this and all of the previous Instant Look in a palettes from Charlotte Tilbury. I'll also be throwing in the Film Star Bronze and Glow just so I can show you like how much cooler that sculpt powder is than the bronzer in here, and also kind of like the similar finish that the highlight has to the highlight in this palette. So I'll be doing a voiceover just to kind of walk you through the comparisons and my thoughts on them. Okay, so here we have it next to the first Instant Look in a palette, the Natural Beauty, and you can see here that there really aren't that many shades that are comparable in either palette. So what I did was I swatched the bronzers, and that's what you'll see on the left. And I have the Natural Beauty on the left, and then the new palette on the right. And then the highlights I have next to that. And again, I have the number 1, the Natural Beauty on the left, and then the new palette on the right. Okay, and now I have it next to number 2, which is the Seductive Beauty. You'll see that on the left. And again, not very many similar shades once you put them next to one another, but I did compare the Eye Brighten number 1 shade, and then I also compared the highlight. And you'll see that the highlight in the Seductive Beauty is a little bit more peach and less vanilla golden than the new palette. Here we have it next to the Smoky Eye Beauty palette. That's the one on the left. This is probably the most dissimilar palette from the new one, but I did compare the number 1 Eye Brighten shade, and again we have the Smoky Eye on the left and the new one on the right, and then I compared the number 6 Cheek Pop color, again Smoky Eye on the left, the new palette on the right, and not very close, but those were probably the 2 closest out of the 2 palettes. And here I have it next to the Beauty Glow palette, which is on the left. And for this, I decided to do 3 comparisons. The number 1 Eye Brighten, you'll see that all the way on the left. And I have the Beauty Glow appearing first, and then the new palette second. And then I compared number 6, the Cheek Pop color in both palettes. And then finally, all the way on the right, is the number 7 Face Highlight from both palettes. The Face Highlight is probably the closest in these 2 palettes than the other ones. This is a comparison to the Film Star Bronze and Glow, and I have the 2 bronzers on the left and the highlights on the right, and the Film Star Bronze and Glow is on the left of each pair of swatches, and then the new palette is on the right. And I think you can see very clearly here that the bronzer in the new palette is much warmer than the sculpt powder in the Film Star Bronze and Glow. And then the 2 highlight shades are actually very, very close. I think the one in the Film Star Bronze and Glow is just a little bit peachier and warmer than the new palette. All right, so those were all of the comparison swatches. Let me know if you have any questions down below in the comments section. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. Subscribe down below if you haven't already, and I will see you in my next video.